Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Trollope read-along for 2020. In 2019, we read all the way through the Palliser novels by Anthony Trollope, a series of novels and one of two long series of novels that Trollope wrote. And in 2020, we're going to pay attention to novels of Trollope that are not part of any series, novels that stand on their own and that sometimes, because of that, get less love than their compatriots in series. So for the course of 2020, we're going to be consorting with lonely Trollops, and for the month of March, we have chosen the biggest and fattest of all of those. This is Trollope's 33rd novel, The Way We Live Now, he came out in book form in 1875 when Trollope was just a couple of years shy of 60, and had been a household name in publishing in bookstores for a long time, decades, and very well paid for his work. This book, as we mentioned last time, represents on paper a bit of a break with Trollope's own traditions and momentum. He had left the country for a while, go to Australia and New Zealand and whatnot, and to come back and had that kind of fresh sharpness of vision that we often have when we come back to a place we know really well after a long separation. You start to see its flaws. Briefly, anyway, most of us recover, and Trollope did too. You start to see its flaws a little bit more sharply, and you start to feel like maybe it's deteriorating in a way that is voluntary and culpable. And Trollope thought that way, absolutely, when he got back to London and saw financial speculation run amok, saw all sorts of deplorable people in high positions in society, and decided, of course, it was his decision to write about it, but at the beginning of The Way We Live Now, anyway, he wrote about it in a decidedly non-Trollopian fashion. He wrote about it savagely. And that is on full display. That was on full display in the first 20 chapters that we read last time. We're reading 20 chapters a week of this big, big book, hoping that you're all enjoying it. I get the impression that you all are. I'm having a great time rereading it. Absolutely great. I always do. It's not justifiable anymore for me to reread a lot of Trollope because I've read it so many times, but I do it anyway because it is the ultimate justification of being so much fun. That's what all reading boils down to. But at the beginning of this book, we're introduced to a big cast of characters. There's Matilda Carberry, the ostensible main character of the book, the widow of a baronet, the mother of the heir to the baronetcy, a struggling, very talentless hack author who has no money. Her son has a title, her husband had a title, but there's no money, almost no money. She has a good house in a good neighborhood. She keeps up good appearances. She herself is lovely. No tatters, always servants. But there's tension. The butcher and the baker have their bills sit by for a long time. And she has hopes along those lines in three directions. And they all touch on the three main plots of the book. Although only two of them immediately. There's a third one that comes up in the chapters that we're reading today. The first and main goal she has, aside from her own literary career, she wants to write and earn a little money as a literary sensation in London. But her main goal is her son, Sir Felix, who is he is baronet and he is the heir to the Carberry title, but he is one of Trollope's classic wastrel youths. Utterly worthless, utterly unprincipled, just a waste of space. who is trading on his title and also on whatever money he can vamp out of his mother to live well beyond his means in drunken gambling and ribaldry in London. Totally irresponsible, and this has been pointed out by the nominal head of the family, Roger Carberry, who is a country squire who wants nothing to do with the city. He thinks it's going to hell in a handbasket. He wants nothing to do with Sir Felix, thinks you're going to ruin your mother and you don't care about it. And he says harsh things like that to Lady Carberry. But Matilda Carberry's main goal when it comes to her son is that he marry money. And in her case, at the beginning part of this novel, she has her eye on the biggest amount of money in the world, which belongs to an odd and bushy-eyebrowed, somewhat threatening foreign financier named Monsieur Melmotte, who has become the toast of London by doling out money and shares in one far-fetched scheme after another. In this case, it's a railroad in South America. To every impoverished lord and nobleman in the city, hosting lavish parties at his mansion, and all that sort of thing. He has wormed his way in as a new man in the surest way possible, with mountains and mountains of money. His wealth is reported to be extreme, and Lady Carberry has her eye on Monsieur Melmotte's only daughter, Marie, because if Sir Felix can beat the rest of the hounds at the pack to get her to love him, well, then the family's finances would be assured. Mr. Melmotte, of course, is going to settle a huge amount of money on his daughter. That is the thinking that Mrs. Carberry has. So she is urging Felix, who's in bed, he stays in bed until 2, he's out until 3 in the morning drinking and gambling. She's urging him to buckle down, to make your suit, to win the girl over, to make it official. And he's indifferent. He knows that he should marry money, and one girl is as good as any other. He's so thoroughly false that he can't even lie to himself. So the whole thing is very spiritless. He tries. There are some painful scenes where he tries. But the problem here is that there's love springing in all directions. Let's just put it that way. Because Lady Carberry has another child. She has a daughter. And the daughter wants to marry a man who has no money, a young man who is not that much better than Sir Felix. They're about the same age, and he's not that much better. He's a tiny bit purer, but only because it would be impossible to be any less pure. But he has no money. He's penniless. And this is against Lady Carberry's wishes. Obviously, her children have to marry for money. She would like her daughter to marry the cousin out in the country. Marry the head of the family. He's got a good home. He owes no one any money. He's an upright person. Marry him. She doesn't love him. She loves him with admiration as a relative, but she doesn't love him in that way. And Mr. Melmotte has the same objection to Sir Felix once he learns the details, because he knows everything about everybody, and he knows that Sir Felix has no money and is never going to have any money, and that's not what he wants. He thinks that he can make a marriage for his daughter. He doesn't love his daughter. He doesn't love anyone, but he thinks he can make a marriage for his daughter that is significantly more advantageous to him. That she could marry higher on the English nobility social scale, and maybe with property thrown in, whereas Sir Felix has none of that. And the two affairs run sort of parallel in the 20 chapters that we're reading today. Something that some of you may have noticed if you're reading along here is that Swiftian bite of sarcasm and satire at the beginning of the book, the very beginning, starts to dissipate, and it starts to dissipate quickly. The 20 chapters that we're reading today devolve rather quickly I shouldn't say devolve, because I love it, absolutely love it, but they shift rather quickly to a pretty standard Trollope novel. Trollope novels usually have interlocking, 2 or maybe 3 interlocking wheels of love affairs that are either doomed or look doomed. And the reader's just supposed to bounce back and forth between all of those. Precious little else really brings to life a Trollope novel than the interlocking love affairs. And we have those here, and we get to see how they act. We get to see what they look like. The love affair that involves Lady Carberry's daughter is one between 2 relatively virtuous young people who don't want to do the wrong thing. They don't want to disobey her, but they know that they love each other, and they assert that they won't love anyone else, even if the match is forbidden. There won't be anyone else. There won't be a love affair down the line. It's more or less standard Trollope territory of virtuous young lovers. He is carefully counting on the fact that the rest of the book will sustain your interest. I think he's fairly well aware that love story is not all that interesting, no matter how much effort he puts into it. And on the other side, you have Sir Felix, who is taken aside at one point in the chapters that we're reading today by Mr. Melmotte, who tells him, look, this can't happen. If my daughter marries against my wishes, I'll cut her off from everything. She won't get a penny. I'll give all my money to a hospital. This is not an idle threat. I don't care about her. I don't care about anything. If I'm crossed in this way, that's what I'll do instantly. So there's nothing here for you. But if you're willing to drop your suit, if you're willing to stop bothering my daughter and me about this whole thing. Just get the whole idea out of your mind. You'll never want for money in the city. I'll make something of you. It's an explicit attempt to buy off Sir Felix with money when allegedly the passion of his heart is involved and it works instantly. There's not the slightest hint of resistance at all. Sir Felix is perfectly happy to write out a note and declare, I am formally withdrawing my suit. But then a note is delivered to him. A note is delivered to him from Marie Melmoth, telling him, well, I don't know what you said to my father and what he said to you, but I thought you should know because I think you should know everything. I'm devoted to you. She has no idea. She has no idea. She's a complete innocent. She's a chip off the old block. She's a baby shark, but she's an innocent of the world. She has no idea that someone as beautiful as Sir Felix could be so false, so worthless. She's in love with him, in other words, infatuated with him. And she sends him a note saying, well, I don't know what was said between the two, but I thought you should know. I know for sure that my father has settled a huge amount of money on me, and that he's made it so that he can't access it without my permission. It was done specifically to prevent him from being ruined. And it's mine. I know for sure that this is true, that it's not his, it's mine, and that he has no say over it. So we wouldn't be beggars. Even if he threatens to cut you off completely if we pursue our love, we wouldn't be beggars. We would have money. And if you're reading this for the first time, you're just sighing when that happens because you don't like Sir Felix at all. You know just the effect a note like that's going to have on him. Those are the two young love affairs, but there's a third love affair that starts to blossom in the 20 chapters that we're reading today, and it involves Mrs. Carberry herself. Lady Carberry has been throwing herself at the literary editors of London coquettishly at her regular literary soirees, and also in letters. We see the book opens pricelessly with a trio of letters that she sends to literary editors to try and woo them to be gentle to her. One of them is gentle enough because he wants his own book reviewed by her favorably, and another has a subordinate rip her book to shreds, but she is told there's no such thing as bad publicity. The worst thing in the world is indifference. Even if it pulled your book apart, most people who are reading that review are only going to remember that they read something about it. They're not going to remember whether it was positive or negative. It will help you. In the long run, it will help you, even though it hurts your dignity, it hurts your pride. And the third of those editors, Mr. Brune, well, he's more infatuated with Lady Carberry, and she certainly thinks more of him than she. The other two are tools to be used, and so is Mr. Brune. Trollope still hasn't given us much in the way of a totally sympathetic character here. She still thinks of him as a tool to be used. But she is floored when he indicates very strongly that he would consider marrying her. And I wanted to read you that bit because it's just precious when she thinks about it. Trollope is so merciless when he gets inside the heads of his characters in this book. This man was this is Lady Carberry thinking. This man was a friend to be used, and to be used because he knew the world. And now he gave her this clear testimony that he knew as little of the world as any other man. Mr. Brune of the daily breakfast table asking her to be his wife. But mixed with her other feelings, there was a tenderness which brought back some memory of her distant youth, and almost made her weep. That a man, such a man, should offer to take half her burdens and to confer upon her half his blessings. What an idiot! But what a god! She had looked upon the man as all intellect, alloyed perhaps by some passionless remnants of the vices of his youth, but now she found that he's not only had a human heart in his bosom, but a heart that she could touch. How wonderfully sweet, how infinitely small. It's just brutal. That is just brutal. And that is those are the chapters that we're reading today. And I want to, I was looking ahead. I'm looking at the chapters to figure out where we're going to start next. We're on chapter 40 now, so we're going to go to chapter 60 for next time. And I was, as long as I'm open here, we're going to read to Lady Monogram Prepares for the Party. That is the chapter that we're going to finish up, that we're going to read to next Sunday. Or it will be Sunday. I missed all of my videos yesterday, but it'll be Sunday next week, I hope. So we're going to read up until then, okay? So that is chapter 61. Lady Monogram Prepares for the Party. But in the meantime, I want to ask you what you made of these 20 chapters. I know I've been hearing from some of you. I'll leave my email. You're welcome to email me about this or anything else. But I'm hearing from a lot of you about who you're rooting for. I've been hearing from a lot of you saying it's pretty hard to root for anybody in this book. There's no real clear choice. Been fairly encouraged by the number of you who are rooting for Lady Carberry, despite the fact that we're told that she's false from head to toe, despite the fact that she has no talent. A lot of you have written to me and said, well, in fact, one of you made a very good point. I would have encouraged you to write a paper about it had you been a student of mine. One of you drew a comparison between Lady Carberry and Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. The obvious choice being, the obvious similarity being that she's desperate to have her children marry well. But beyond that, that maybe there's the hint that maybe this narrative is being too harsh on her, and that maybe we could read in more sympathy than the book actually wants us to. But there's so much else going on in this novel. All sorts of stuff in Sir Felix's world with the bear garden and his wasteful friends. All sorts of high finance. In these chapters, Mr. Melmotte gains a seat in Parliament. It's just there's a limit to how much you can talk about in a book this big in one video. So feel free in the comments to tell me what stuff was jumping out to you, especially if this is your first time reading The Way We Live Now. A big, opulent social satire by an author not particularly known for that when he wrote this book. So anyway, we're going to wrap this up for now, and I'm sorry to have missed a day. I'll try to hit Sunday next week, and we'll read the next 20 chapters of The Way We Live Now and continue our year of consorting with lonely trollops. So I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.